Ryan's office revenge.
You know that moment when you realize your entire career just got flushed down the toilet? I was sitting in the executive conference room at Crest Financial watching dust particles float through the morning sunlight when it hit me. My name is Patrick Wilson. I'm 49 years old, and 30 minutes ago, I was the chief technology architect at a company that processes $15 million in daily transactions. Now, I'm just another guy cleaning out his desk. Daniel Crawford stood across from me, all 41 years of him, with his expensive watch and that Silicon Valley smile that made my skin crawl. He'd been our new CEO for 8 months, brought in by the board to accelerate digital transformation and optimize operational velocity. That's corporate speak for get rid of the old guys who actually know how things work. Patrick, he began, using that fake warm voice they teach you in MBA school. We need to discuss the evolutionary trajectory of our technology infrastructure. I didn't say anything. 18 years in this business teaches you when to shut up and let the other guy hang himself with his own rope. He started pacing by the windows, hands behind his back like some kind of general. The board and I have been conducting a comprehensive evaluation of our technical architecture paradigm. Your contributions have been historically significant. The pause before those last 2 words told me everything I needed to know. However, he continued, turning to face me directly, we're pivoting toward cloud-native solutions, containerized microservices, and agile DevOps methodologies. Your approach, while demonstrably stable, represents legacy thinking patterns that inhibit innovation velocity. Legacy thinking patterns. That's what they called 18 years of keeping their systems running without a single major outage. The monolithic architecture you implemented starting in 2006 served its purpose during that era, Daniel said, consulting his tablet like he was reading scripture. But we're operating in a radically different competitive landscape. Speed to market, continuous integration, machine learning integration, API-first development. These are the performance indicators that drive market differentiation. I leaned back in my chair. That monolithic architecture handled Black Friday with 0 downtime while our 3 biggest competitors crashed. It processes payroll for 500,000 employees across 12 states. It's passed every federal compliance audit for the past 10 years without a single violation. His smile got tighter. Historical performance metrics don't guarantee future scalability optimization. Patrick, we've engaged Rise Advisory to conduct a comprehensive technical debt assessment and architect our digital transformation roadmap. Their preliminary findings indicate we need to onboard fresh perspectives with contemporary skill matrices. There it was, the real message wrapped up in enough buzzwords to choke a horse. You're firing me, I said. Not a question. We're implementing organizational restructuring initiatives. Your current role is being sunset as part of broader operational optimization. We'll provide a comprehensive transition package, 6-month salary, benefits continuation, and strong reference letters. I looked around the room at the other executives. Michelle Rodriguez, the COO, was studying her coffee cup like it contained the secrets of the universe. Timothy Walsh, our CTO, wouldn't meet my eyes, and I'd trained that kid from a junior developer who couldn't spell algorithm. Charles Peterson, the CFO who knew exactly how much money my architecture had saved this company over the years, was suddenly fascinated by his smartphone. These were people I'd worked with for years. People whose kids I knew by name. People I'd bailed out of technical disasters more times than I could count. When? I asked. Effective immediately. We'll need your credentials, access cards, and company devices. Security will coordinate your personal belongings collection. Clean, surgical. 18 years reduced to a cardboard box and a security escort. As I stood up, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I glanced at the screen and felt my stomach drop. It was an automated alert from a monitoring system I'd built into the core architecture years ago, a fail-safe that nobody else knew existed. The encryption key rotation system was showing amber status, not critical yet, but requiring attention within 72 hours. The walk to my office felt like a death march. Eyes tracked me from cubicles and conference rooms. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. In corporate America, bad news travels faster than broadband, carried on Slack channels and whispered conversations by the coffee machine. At the security desk, Rachel Parker stood up too quickly, nearly knocking over her coffee. I recognized her. one of the junior engineers I'd been mentoring, fresh out of state with her computer science degree. "Mr. Wilson," she said, her voice shaking, "I've been instructed to... I have a box for your things." "I know, Rachel. You're just doing your job." She handed me a standard departure box, the kind they keep stacked in HR for occasions like this. Her eyes were red. Kid probably looked up to me, and now she was watching her mentor get walked out like a security risk. "This is wrong," she whispered. "Everyone knows you built this place." "Sometimes that doesn't matter," I told her quietly. I surrendered my access badge first. 20-something grams of plastic that had opened every door in this building for 18 years. Then my company phone, encrypted and containing years of architectural notes and emergency protocols I could recreate from memory if I needed to. "Patrick," the voice came from behind me. "Timothy Walsh, our CTO. Late 30s, brilliant with algorithms, terrible with people. He'd been my protege back when he joined as a junior developer fresh out of college with big dreams and bigger student loans. I just heard about the restructuring. Daniel didn't consult me on this decision matrix. I would have advocated for alternative solutions." "Would you have?" I asked, keeping my tone neutral. He hesitated, and that hesitation told me everything. In corporate America, silence equals consent. The board positioned it as a strategic imperative. But Patrick, who's going to manage the core payment processing, the encryption protocols, the failover systems, the compliance frameworks? "That," I said quietly, "is no longer my operational responsibility. You endorsed this restructuring by remaining silent." The drive home took 35 minutes through downtown traffic. 35 minutes to process 18 years of loyalty getting tossed in the corporate dumpster. By the time I pulled into our driveway, I'd made peace with one thing. They'd just made the biggest mistake in Crest Financial's history. They just didn't know it yet. Linda was in the kitchen making dinner when I walked through the front door at 6:15 p.m., still in her scrubs from her nursing shift at Regional Medical Center. After 23 years of marriage, she could read my face like a medical chart. She took one look at me and set down her spoon. "They let you go," she said. "Not a question. Restructuring." My role was eliminated. She wrapped her arms around me, and for a minute I just stood there in our kitchen, smelling the pot roast she'd started in the slow cooker that morning, feeling the weight of 18 years crashing down on my shoulders. "What's our financial situation?" Linda asked. This is why I married this woman. No drama, no blame, just straight to the practical questions that mattered. 6 months severance, benefits continuation. I already have a lead on something else. I pulled back to look at her. "How much do we have in savings?" "About $47,000. Between Brian's tuition next semester and Jennifer's pre-med expenses." She didn't need to finish. We both knew the math. Brian chose that moment to walk in from his computer science study group, backpack slung over his shoulder. At 21, he looked more like Linda than me, but he had my stubborn streak. "Hey, Dad, you're home early. Everything okay?" Linda and I exchanged glances. "Sit down, son." When I explained what happened, Brian's reaction surprised me. Instead of panic, he got angry. "That's garbage, Dad. You built their entire system. Everyone in my networking class knows about the Crest architecture. Professor Martinez uses it as an example of proper security implementation. Your professor talks about my work? All the time. He calls it the gold standard for financial processing security. Says most companies could learn from whoever designed it." Brian shook his head. "They have no idea what they just did, do they?" Before I could answer, Jennifer burst through the front door, still in her scrubs from her hospital volunteer work. At 19, she was already thinking like a doctor, analytical, systematic, direct. "Why does everyone look like someone died?" she asked, dropping her bag by the door. We explained the situation again. Jennifer listened without interrupting, then asked the question that cut right to the heart of it. "Dad, what happens to their system without you?" "They'll figure it out. They have smart people." "But do they have people who understand your system?" That was the million-dollar question, wasn't it? My phone rang at 8:30 p.m. while we were finishing dinner. George Thompson from Fortress Financial Systems, right on schedule. "Mr. Wilson, I heard about the organizational changes at Crest. I want to discuss an opportunity." I stepped into my home office while the family cleaned up. George outlined their situation. Rapid growth, scaling problems, infrastructure buckling under increased load. They needed someone who understood that stability wasn't the enemy of innovation. "What's your timeline?" I asked. "We'd like you to start as soon as possible. Chief Technology Advisor position, $180,000 base, equity participation, complete technical authority over infrastructure decisions." It was a good offer. Better than good. "I'll need to think about it." "Of course. But Patrick, I want you to know, we've been watching your work at Crest for years. What you built there is exactly what we need here. Proven, secure, scalable architecture." After we hung up, I sat in my office thinking about 18 years of late nights, weekend deployments, crisis management, all those times I'd missed family dinners because some system was throwing alerts, all those vacations interrupted by emergency calls. Linda appeared in the doorway with 2 cups of coffee. "Good news? Potentially. Fortress Financial wants me as Chief Technology Advisor. Better pay, better respect." "Then why do you look conflicted?" I sipped the coffee she'd made. Strong, black, the way I'd drunk it during those long nights keeping Crest's systems running. Because part of me wants to watch Crest burn for what they did today. And the other part? The other part knows there are 500,000 people depending on that system for their paychecks. At 11:47 p.m., my personal phone rang. Timothy Walsh, and I could hear the panic in his voice before he even spoke. "Patrick, we have a situation. The overnight batch processing failed completely. Payroll for 500,000 employees didn't complete." I set down my coffee and leaned back in my chair. I'd been expecting this call, just not quite this soon. What's the error message? That's the problem. There's no error message. The batch processing just stopped at 3:47 a.m. No logs, no alerts, nothing in the system monitoring. I knew exactly what had happened. The batch processing system included health checks that verified the integrity of the encryption module. If those checks failed, the system would gracefully halt rather than risk processing financial data with compromised security. It was a fail-safe I'd implemented after a close call in 2019 when a competitor had suffered a massive data breach. "Timothy, what does the encryption key rotation status show?" How do I check that?" Timothy Walsh was our Chief Technology Officer, making $200,000 a year, and he was asking me how to check basic system status. "There should be a monitoring dashboard. Look for encryption module status, key rotation indicators." I heard frantic typing, mouse clicks, frustrated muttering. "I found a dashboard, but I don't have access. It shows insufficient privileges for this operation." Of course it did. The encryption systems were restricted to my administrative credentials. I'd always meant to create additional admin accounts, but it had never been a priority. There was always another crisis, another deadline, another fire to put out. "Patrick, I need your help. This isn't about corporate politics anymore. 500,000 people won't get paid tomorrow if we can't resolve this." I looked out my office window at the suburban street where Linda and I had raised our kids. Normal people living normal lives, going to jobs where their expertise was valued, where 18 years of loyalty meant something. "Timothy, I don't work there anymore. I understand that, but do you?" Because this morning, Daniel Crawford told me my expertise was obsolete, that my approach represented legacy thinking patterns. "Presumably your modern frameworks and fresh perspectives can solve this more efficiently than my outdated methods." Long silence on the other end. "This could take weeks to reverse engineer," Timothy finally said. "The documentation in our repositories doesn't cover the security implementations." "Then it takes weeks," I replied. "You have talented engineers. You have expensive consultants from Rise Advisory who specialize in digital transformation. Figure it out. Patrick, please." I hung up and turned off my phone. Linda appeared in the doorway again. That sounded important. It was. Their system is failing and they want me to fix it for free. And you're not going to. They made their choice. Now they get to live with the consequences. But as I said it, I thought about Rachel Parker, the young engineer who'd looked ready to cry when she handed me that cardboard box. I thought about the 500,000 people who'd wake up tomorrow expecting their paychecks, people with mortgages and car payments and kids heading to college. Sometimes doing the right thing means letting people learn the hard way. I woke up the next morning to my phone buzzing like an angry hornet. 17 missed calls, 43 text messages, and 12 voicemails. But the real wake-up call came from Linda, who was standing in our bedroom doorway with her tablet in hand. "Patrick, you need to see this." The headline on the financial news website read, Major payroll processor experiences widespread system failure. Below that, 500,000 workers await delayed paychecks as Crest Financial Systems enter second day of outage. Jesus, I muttered, scrolling through the article. They made it sound like the apocalypse. Keep reading, Linda said. The article quoted several affected companies, union representatives expressing concern for workers living paycheck to paycheck, and, this made my stomach drop, a statement from the Federal Reserve noting they were monitoring the situation closely. My phone rang. Daniel Crawford. I let it go to voicemail. It rang again immediately. I turned it off. You're enjoying this, Linda observed, sitting on the edge of our bed. I'm not enjoying 500,000 people being stuck without paychecks, but I'm not particularly broken up about Daniel Crawford sweating bullets either. What are you going to do? Before I could answer, our landline rang. We still kept the old house phone for emergencies and only family had the number. Mr. Wilson? This is Patricia Hayes from Crest Financial's Board of Directors. We need to speak with you urgently. Board level. This was escalating faster than I'd expected. I'm actually about to start my first day at a new position, Ms. Hayes. Perhaps we could schedule something for next week. Mr. Wilson, our entire payment processing platform has been down for 26 hours. We're facing potential regulatory action, media scrutiny, and our clients are threatening mass departures. We need your expertise immediately. I walked into the kitchen, where Brian and Jennifer were eating breakfast before their classes. Both looked up when I entered. What happened to Reese Advisory? I asked Patricia. Your digital transformation consultants with the fresh perspectives. Long pause. They've been unable to resolve the core issues, and our internal team is missing critical system knowledge. What kind of critical knowledge? Security protocols, encryption configurations, failover procedures, things that apparently weren't fully documented in our standard repositories. Why weren't they documented? Another pause, even longer. We're not entirely certain. I could have explained that I'd maintained comprehensive documentation on my personal servers, accumulated over 18 years of building and refining their systems. I could have mentioned that I'd repeatedly suggested cross-training additional senior architects, but budget constraints had always prevented it. I could have pointed out that institutional knowledge requires institutional investment. Instead, I said, what exactly are you asking me to do? Return as an emergency consultant. We'll pay whatever you want. I have a new position. I can't just abandon that commitment. Please, Mr. Wilson, this is about more than corporate politics. We have 500,000 families depending on those paychecks, and every hour of delay is making this worse. I looked at my kids, both listening intently. Brian had stopped eating his cereal. Jennifer was watching me with that analytical expression she'd inherited from her mother. What's your offer? I asked. Name your terms. I thought carefully. This wasn't about money anymore. It was about setting a precedent for how companies treat experienced professionals. $1,500 per hour. Minimum 80-hour engagement. Payment in advance. And I don't report to Daniel Crawford. I report directly to the board with final authority on all technical decisions during this engagement. That's $120,000 just for the minimum retainer. That's the cost of emergency expertise, I replied. It's negotiable if you'd prefer to wait for your current team to figure it out independently. Hold on. I heard muffled conversation, hands over the phone, urgent whispers in the background. Brian gave me a thumbs up. Jennifer just smiled. We accept your terms, Patricia said when she returned. How soon can you start? I'll need to discuss this with my new employer. If Fortress Financial is willing to loan me out for this emergency, and that's a significant if, I could potentially begin this afternoon. But I want to be absolutely clear about something. Yes, this is a limited engagement to restore service and implement proper knowledge transfer protocols. I'm not coming back permanently. And when this is over, Crest Financial will have learned a very expensive lesson about the value of institutional knowledge. After I hung up, Linda poured me a cup of coffee. Feel good about that? Ask me again in a few weeks. My next call was to George Thompson at Fortress Financial. I explained the situation honestly. What do you want to do? He asked. Part of me wants to let them suffer the full consequences. They made a calculated decision that my expertise was expendable. But there are too many innocent people getting hurt. Here's my perspective, Patrick. You're exactly the kind of person we want leading our technology strategy. Someone who understands that systems serve people, not egos. If you need to take a few weeks to clean up this mess and do it the right way, we'll support that. Consider it a preview of the integrity we want in our architecture. You're sure about this? Completely. But Patrick, make sure they understand the full cost of what they did. Not just financially, but institutionally. The contract negotiation took most of the morning. My lawyer friend helped draft terms that were explicit and unforgiving. Full access to all systems, complete technical authority, no interference from Daniel or the RISE advisory consultants, and a comprehensive knowledge transfer plan that would take minimum 4 weeks to execute properly. By 2 p.m., Crest's legal team had signed everything. The retainer payment hit my account 45 minutes later. At 4 p.m., I drove back to the office I'd been escorted out of just 30 hours earlier. The building looked the same but felt different. There was desperation in the air, a tension that hummed through the fluorescent lights and empty corridors. Rachel Parker met me at the security desk, her eyes red from crying or exhaustion or both. "Mr. Wilson, thank God you're here. It's been chaos. The RISE advisory people made everything worse trying to bypass the security protocols, and now Timothy can't even access the main monitoring systems." "Where is Timothy?" "Conference room B. He's been there all night with the consultants trying to reverse engineer your encryption implementations." I found Timothy hunched over a laptop, surrounded by empty coffee cups and 3 guys in expensive suits who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. These would be the RISE advisory consultants, the fresh perspectives who were going to modernize everything. "Everyone stop what you're doing," I said, not loudly, but with unmistakable authority. The room went silent. Timothy looked up with relief and exhaustion. The consultants looked annoyed. "Before we fix anything, I need to understand exactly what you've attempted and what state the systems are currently in. One wrong move at this point could make the situation exponentially worse." One of the consultants, a guy who couldn't have been older than 30, spoke up. "We've been implementing cloud-native solutions to bypass the legacy encryption bottlenecks." I stared at him. "You've been doing what?" "Containerizing the payment processing workflows to eliminate the monolithic dependencies." "Do you have any idea what you just said?" He looked confused. The other 2 consultants suddenly found their laptops very interesting. I turned to Timothy. "How bad is it?" "Bad," he admitted. "They tried to migrate core functions to a microservices architecture, but the security dependencies are more complex than anyone realized. We may have compromised the entire encryption framework." I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. This wasn't just a system failure anymore. This was potentially a security catastrophe. The next 18 hours were the longest of my professional life, not because of the technical complexity. I'd dealt with worse crises over the years, but because I was watching a company learn in real time what happens when you throw away 18 years of institutional knowledge. The RISE advisory consultants had done more damage than I'd initially realized. In their rush to modernize the architecture, they'd bypassed security protocols they didn't understand, created data inconsistencies across multiple systems, and somehow managed to trigger a cascading failure that affected not just payroll processing, but the entire transaction verification network. "How long to fix this?" Timothy asked around 2 a.m. as we worked through the night in the operations center. "If we're lucky and nothing else breaks, 72 hours to restore basic functionality. Another 2 weeks minimum to verify data integrity and implement proper safeguards." 2 weeks? Timothy, they didn't just break your payroll system. They compromised the security architecture that protects $15 million in daily transactions. We're talking about potential regulatory violations, compliance failures, and security vulnerabilities that could take months to fully assess. One of the RISE consultants, who'd been sitting quietly in the corner for hours, finally spoke up. "We followed industry best practices for cloud migration." I turned to look at him. "Whose best practices?" "Standard microservices, architecture patterns, container orchestration, API-first design principles. For a financial processing system handling 500,000 payroll records, the principles are universal." I walked over to the whiteboard and started drawing the actual system architecture, not the sanitized version in their documentation, but the real network of dependencies, security layers, and compliance requirements I'd built over 18 years. "See this encryption module? It doesn't just encrypt data. It maintains audit trails for federal compliance, integrates with 3 different regulatory reporting systems, and includes fail-safes that prevent processing if security integrity is compromised. Your universal principles just destroyed all of that." The consultant looked at the diagram, then at his laptop, then back at the diagram. We didn't know about those dependencies. That's the point. You can't modernize what you don't understand. By 6 a.m. Thursday, we had basic payroll processing restored. The 500,000 delayed paychecks finally went through 58 hours late, but that was just the beginning. I spent the next 3 weeks conducting the most comprehensive knowledge transfer of my career, not just documenting systems, but explaining the reasoning behind every design decision, every security protocol, every seemingly redundant safeguard. Timothy proved to be a quick learner when he wasn't panicking. "Why did you implement dual-layer encryption here?" he asked during one of our sessions. "Because in 2019, a competitor got hacked when someone bypassed their single encryption layer. The regulatory audit that followed cost them $40 million in fines and nearly shut them down. That's not in any of our documentation. It is now." Rachel Parker sat in on most of these sessions, taking detailed notes, asking intelligent questions. She reminded me why I'd gotten into this field in the first place. The satisfaction of building systems that actually worked, that protected people's financial security, that could be relied upon when everything else fell apart. During the third week, Patricia Hayes requested a meeting. I found her in the executive conference room where this whole mess had started. "Mr. Wilson, I want to apologize personally for how your departure was handled." "Apology noted," I said, sitting down across from her. "The board has asked me to extend a formal offer for you to return permanently. Chief Technology Officer reporting directly to the board, complete authority over technical decisions." I almost laughed. What happened to Daniel's digital transformation vision? Mr. Crawford submitted his resignation yesterday. He felt it was in the company's best interests, and the Rise Advisory contract? Terminated. We're implementing new policies requiring board approval for any major infrastructure changes. I leaned back in my chair. What's the offer? $220,000 base salary, equity participation, and a formal commitment that your position can only be eliminated with unanimous board approval. It was a good offer, more than good. But I'd already made my decision weeks ago. I appreciate the offer, but I've accepted the position at Fortress Financial. I start Monday as their chief technology advisor. They can't possibly match what we're offering. It's not about the money, Patricia. It's about working somewhere that values expertise before they need to be rescued by it. The final invoice came to $187,000, 124 hours at $1,500 per hour, plus the original retainer. The most expensive lesson in institutional knowledge that Crest Financial would ever receive. On my last day, Rachel Parker stopped by my temporary office. "Mr. Wilson, I wanted to thank you. Not just for saving our jobs, but for teaching me what real engineering looks like. What are you going to do now? Stay here for another year or two? Learn everything I can from Timothy, then probably look for something else?" After watching this whole mess, I understand now that companies either value experience or they learn to value it the hard way. Smart kid. She'd go far. I drove home that Friday afternoon thinking about the past month. Linda was waiting in the kitchen with a bottle of wine and takeout from our favorite Italian place. "How does it feel to be officially done with Crest?" she asked. "Good. Strange, but good. Brian called today. He's been telling everyone in his computer science program about his dad who brought down a corporation just by walking away. I didn't bring them down. I just stopped holding them up. Same difference. Monday morning at Fortress Financial felt like starting over at 49. New office, new team, new challenges. But for the first time in years, I was working somewhere that understood the difference between innovation and disruption, between progress and just changing things for the sake of change. George Thompson stopped by my office around 10 a.m. "How's the first day going?" "Good. Your infrastructure has some interesting challenges. That's why we hired you. Build us something that lasts." 6 months later, I got a LinkedIn message from Timothy Walsh. Crest Financial had suffered another major outage. Different system this time, but similar root cause. Inadequate knowledge transfer, rushed modernization, consulting firm that promised more than they could deliver. I didn't respond to the message. Some lessons you can only learn once. These days, when people ask me about what happened at Crest Financial, I tell them the truth. I didn't destroy their systems. I just stopped fixing them for free. There's a difference between revenge and consequences. 18 years taught me that expertise isn't obsolete. It's just quiet until you need it. And when you need it, you'd better hope it's still willing to answer the phone. The best part? Brian graduates next month with his computer science degree. He's already got 3 job offers, and every company that interviews him knows exactly who his father is. Turns out there are worse things than being known as the guy who proved that experience matters. Linda still laughs about it sometimes. "You know what the funniest part is?" she said last weekend. "They could have just treated you with respect and kept you forever. Instead, they paid $187,000 to learn what that respect was worth." Sometimes the best revenge is just letting people learn from their own mistakes, especially when those mistakes cost 6 figures and make national news. Here's what I learned after 49 years on this planet. Experience looks expensive until you try to replace it. And institutional knowledge isn't just what you know, it's knowing why it matters. Here's what I learned after 18 years in corporate America. They'll call your experience outdated right up until the moment they desperately need it. And by then, it's going to cost them a hell of a lot more than the respect they should have shown you in the first place.